would like to offer anything, I'd like to start that way instead of starting with me. If anyone has any thoughts or feelings or responses to what happened in that school in Texas, please feel free to start and offer those thoughts or those responses.
May I, Rabbi?
Okay.
I don't know a lot. But
I have something to say.
Okay, I see Susie.
Okay, Susie, go ahead.
I just want the world to know, the United States to know, that what happened in that small elementary school in Texas could happen any place. Before I retired 10 years ago at Kenter Canyon, oh, I'm sending my kid to Kenter Canyon. It's such a safe school. It's such a great school. Okay, I thought the same thing. Nothing will happen there. About 4 months before I retired, there was a gentleman at the fence. If you've ever driven around Kenter, it has a fence all around it. At recess time, about 10:10, a gentleman in his pajamas that lived directly across the street. All he did was cross over and get to the fence in his pajamas. And he had a rifle. He was a very senior old man. He was not well. He had mental illness, blah, 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 blah. They left him without his caregiver. He had a 24-hour caregiver. The family, I'm going to tell you the end of the story. Nothing happened. A kid on the campus came running into the office saying, there's a man at the fence with a gun. I also don't have to go into every detail, but it all.
Susie, let's shorten the story so other
Okay,
people.
I just want the world to know that nobody is safe, and we've got to do something about the guns. And I just don't know what to do. I've written to everybody there is to write to.
Okay, thank you, Susie.
You're welcome.
Okay, Donna.
I talked to the White House this morning. I wrote the president a letter. He said, God, when in God's name is someone going to stand up and do something about this? I said, I'm going to do something. You have to have the money to lobby and change the laws. And these men in Congress that are sitting on our butts, worrying about their constituents, and they want to keep their job, and they're not even doing their job. They care more about the money than the lives of these children. They're going to get voted out. There's going to be a law passed. If I have to raise millions of dollars to start to do it, I'm going to do something about this. I am sick and tired of no one doing anything and being afraid of, you know what, men have been running this country, and look at the mess we're in.
Thank you. Any other thoughts that you would like to freely offer? We're not building, we're just taking individual comments. And then we're going to move on. No one else?
May I ask one more question, Rabbi? What about the congressman getting voted out with no retirement fund, a pink slip, pack it out, get out the door because you didn't do your job? There could be a law passed to get them voted out that way. There's a way to do this.
I'm afraid not. Harvey?
Yeah, I got a question. How come every time after one of these shootings and people who have some kind of common sense say, well, we have to have some kind of sane gun control laws, the other side says, well, that's just politicizing it. You're politicizing the matter. I want to know how it's politicizing the matter when you want to save some lives by taking away AR-15s from children. That's my question.
Thank you. Anybody else want to come in with a new comment? Anybody else? Doris?
Muted? Oh, I was going to say, I think there are crazy people everywhere, and they find a way to do damage somehow or other. I don't think you can blame it on the guns. Well, they shouldn't be selling AR-15s to anybody. They're not, those guns are not supposed to be available. And this is an 18-year-old kid. He just got it he just turned 18 and he went out and he bought those guns.
It was a birthday gift to himself.
He gave himself a birthday gift, and he wrote, I don't know if you heard this latest thing that he wrote, I'm going to kill him. He shoot my grandma, then I'm going to go shoot an elementary school. He did write that down, but after the fact, people found it. But I just think
I
crazy
agree with
people,
you.
crazy people are crazy people, and you can give them a gun, you can give them a knife, you can do anything you want. And they need to be institutionalized rather than, given guns. They need to get into a hospital and get treated. But who's going to get them into the hospital? His grandmother?
That's correct. Merle,
Look at Australia.
Merle,
I think the biggest problem that, I rarely watch the news because it disturbs me lately. And for some reason last night and then again this morning, I spent the morning on the news and just to hear what everyone said. I think the biggest problem is that there's no way of determining who's mentally ill and who's not. I think the biggest problem is that this stuff is available, and this type of weapon shouldn't even be available, and it's allowed to be available. The other thing is I have three schools in our neighborhood that our daughter grew up at, and the school where the girls are now. All the schools in Scottsdale have been remodeled. They look beautiful. They've been, rearranged. And every single school has totally open fences that, like the kindergarten playground at the girls' school, you just have to do a drive-by. You don't even have to go on the campus. And when I used to sit in front of that parking lot to wait and pick up the girls, I used to sit there and think they can just walk. They don't need to walk on the campus. They can be there the timing that those kids are in school, and they can just shoot up free classes of kindergarten kids.
God
And
forbid.
I think that's part of our problem is that nobody, they want the schools to look beautiful. They want them to fit into the neighborhood, and not all schools are that way. But when I look at what I look at right down my corner, you can walk right on the athletic field and onto the campus in a middle school. The bus gates where the school buses pull up, they have no gates that are locked. I mean, people go up there for Little League and whatever Little League football is and soccer. You can just walk right on those gates.
But here they're all fenced and locked in.
Here they aren't, and it's frightening. Well, and look at the state we live in. It's frightening to me that everybody is into beauty and all these things are available because you don't want to turn anyone away, but this is what happens, and it's disturbing.
okay, thank you. I have a note here from Hannah Gold with regard to Uvalde. The Temple, Wilshire Boulevard, will be holding a vigil on Zoom tonight at 8 p.m. 8 p.m. tonight.
Great.
There will be a vigil.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Brad.
Rabbi, I just have a question. Can you tell us a little bit about gun control in Israel? How do they deal with this issue?
Great question.
The simple, first of all, the number of Israelis, civilians shot in this kind of a thing is dramatically less percentage-wise than in the United States. That's number one. Number two, almost every Israeli older teenager, 18-year-old, enters the army and learns how to fire and respect weapons. By the way, that's really important. Not only how to fire, but how to respect weapons. When Risa and I would travel around the country in a public bus, we would get on the bus. These 18, 19-year-olds would come in with their automatic weapons. They'd put them up on the luggage rack. The first times this happened, yes, we were a little spooked, but that's what they do. They put them up on the luggage rack and off we go then, because they're not allowed to be separated from their weapons.
I love
Next,
the idea.
Israel has a very strict system. If you are going to carry a weapon as a civilian, you have to go through psychological screening and an application process through the government.
That's wonderful.
And
I'll apply.
trust me, this doesn't stop. I mean, it was properly said. This doesn't, Doris said it, this doesn't stop all crazy people from doing crazy things, but it certainly reduces dramatically. The United States is probably number one in the world for this kind of senseless gun violence. And that is totally unlike what goes on in Israel. Someone else had a hand? Risa, did you have your hand up or a thought or not? No? Okay.
Help me make Aliyah, Rabbi.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to move on from this.
Seriously.
The easy thing is to offer prayers. My friend Gilroy took notes this morning on what President Obama said in 2012 after Sandy Hook. Why did he take notes? Because President Biden is going to be addressing the nation tonight, and he wants to know whether anything different is going to be said than was said in 2012. I think that's going to be a great thing to explore, because there was a senator from Connecticut who spoke yesterday. He was brilliant.
I love him.
He was brilliant, unscripted from the floor. And we have good news that Senator Cruz is praying. And I think that, with all due respect, I'm not sure that's going to resolve the problem. We're going to move on unless somebody has something to add. We're going to move on.
I just have one quick question, Rabbi. Why do you think that what I said about changing the laws with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, saying everything with laws and votes and legislation and lobbying is possible to change the world?
Yeah. On paper, that's true. Have you ever looked at the people who are in the Senate? That's the end of my comment.
Not a lot of women.
They're not going to do it. They're not going to do it.
Then replace them.
They're not going to be replaced because their people like their positions. That's the reality of
I don't believe that's true. I think
okay, great. I'm with you. Change the world. I'm there. Okay, number two, to move into a totally different sphere of activity, ladies and gentlemen, this year marks the 125th anniversary of the publication of Bram Stoker's Dracula. 125 years, Dracula has been with us, drinking our blood and offering us midnight fright. So that's good. And speaking of midnight fright, Bob Dylan's 81st birthday is now.
Oh.
When I read that, I almost passed out. Bob Dylan, 81. My first thought was, I'm 82. Look what he's done. It's very painful. Okay. But beyond that, happy birthday, Bob Dylan. Next, on Tuesday, which is like yesterday, Deborah Lipstadt became an ambassador. She was sworn in by Vice President Kamala Harris, and she is now officially an ambassador to combat and monitor anti-Semitism. Quote, a visibly emotional Lipstadt took the oath on a copy of the U.S. Army Talmud, which was printed in the U.S. zone of Allied occupied Germany in 1948, doing that, being sworn in on behalf of Holocaust survivors in displaced persons camps. So that's what she chose. And then she doubled up, and her mother had a book of Psalms, which she read regularly. And so she took the oath on a U.S. Army edition of the Talmud published in support of those who survived the Holocaust, and her mother's book of Psalms. Okay, I mean, that's very lovely. That's very lovely. Now we can get Risa Shirley. I don't hear you.
You're
She's
muted.
muted.
Yes, isn't that sweet? No, that's bad.
Lisa's muted, huh?
Risa, what?
What's the difference between an ambassador and a special envoy? I haven't heard her called ambassador. I've always heard her called special envoy, and I don't know the difference.
I think she is an ambassador. An ambassador's title is for life, like judge, like senator, president. So she has attained rank in the diplomatic service.
Right.
The picture that she posted on Facebook this morning after her swearing in said the folder that I guess that was read from said ambassador on it, I believe.
Yes.
But I just wanted to say, if you've never followed Deborah, what she's done, read her books, anything, she's an amazing woman. And I would give anything to take classes from her again, though she doesn't teach much anymore.
No.
She is phenomenal. And she deserved this on behalf of all of us. She's there for all of us. And that's what is so incredible.
Yeah. Risa, do you want to comment on that?
Just that she was also an amazing young woman when we worked with her when she was in her early 20s getting her doctorate at Brandeis and was working for Stanley.
Yeah, she was working for me. But once again, like Bob Dylan, I feel like I'm standing at the edge of the road and these cars with dust from behind them pouring down the highway, and I'm waving. Okay, Deborah is amazing, Now, next, do you know that there is an agreement that Jews will not pray atop the Temple Mount? Are you aware? This is a very important thing. At the conclusion of the 67 war, Moshe Dayan was in charge of making a lot of the arrangements. And one of the arrangements made was that no public prayer by Jews would be allowed on the Temple Mount. In return, the wall below, the wall below the Temple Mount will not be subject to physical violence from the Arabs atop the Temple Mount. So that was kind of the quid pro quo. A lot of people think that Moshe Dayan made a lousy deal and saying that if a Jew went up on top of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem and prayed, that Jew could be arrested or would be arrested. Now, right-wing Israelis have decided that it's time to poke the bear in the eye. And so groups of 2 or 3 people are coming up onto the Temple Mount, praying silently, but next to each other. And they were arrested. Jerusalem Magistrates Court juvenile judge indicated that 3 Jewish teenagers who were arrested by Israeli police for the crime of praying atop the Temple Mount were to be released without penalty. And I just have to tell you, that problem of Jewish access to the Temple Mount is one of those flashpoints which is going to increasingly cause tension and violence there. There are several members of the Knesset who announce in advance that they're going up on the Temple Mount to pray, forcing the police to arrest them and carry them away from the Temple Mount before there is a riot. Praying on the Temple Mount out loud or in a group is forbidden to Jews. And people look at the so-called status quo, matzav natun, the status quo, and say that the status quo is holding. Israel doesn't have to make any deals, peace, whatever, it's holding. And I want to indicate to you that it's more than fraying around the edges, that the status quo is far more fragile than most Jews in America who don't want to think about it actually believe. Question before we move on. Okay, yes, Susie?
Are these people that are going up to the Temple Mount to pray, Jews, are they trying to be antagonistic? Are they trying to go like this, so that they make some trouble?
It all depends, Susie, on who you're asking. You asked these three teenagers who were sent up onto the Temple Mount to pray and to be arrested. And they will say, we're Jews, we're davening. What's your problem? On the other hand, the entire effort is supported by right-wing religious groups that are challenging the 1967 status quo arrangement. So the answer is it depends on whom you ask. From my point of view, their presence on the Temple Mount is a political act.
I agree.
Okay. Anyone else on this?
I have a question about this. What do you think would happen? Like Kirk Douglas, built the playgrounds for everybody to play together. What would you think would happen if a Muslim, a Christian, a Jew, Arab, and Palestinian went up on the mount, all to hold hands and pray together? What would they do then?
Well, I'll tell you, if Kirk Douglas showed up on the Temple Mount to pray, this would be awesome. I think he's dead, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes.
Yeah. So if Kirk Douglas shows up on the Temple Mount, we're in a different ballgame.
I sat right behind him.
I don't want to discuss the theology.
But the analogy of it, Rabbi, what do you think would happen if a Muslim, a Christian, a Jew, an Arab, and a Palestinian child held hands and went up on the Temple Mount to pray? Everybody joined hands with them. It can happen with the Spirit of God.
Okay, let me just relate to you a brief story about my famous book number 2, which is now going to be replaced by book number 3. But I wanted, because the topic of book number 2 is the Israeli Declaration of Independence. And all of the people, Israelis and Jews in the diaspora, were commenting section by section of the Declaration of Independence. There was a statement in the Declaration of Independence which calls for equal treatment of Muslims, Arabs. I wanted to find a Muslim activist Israeli to comment on that in the book. It was the hardest search I did. People we knew, Muslim activists working with Jewish social action people people honestly committed to justice and peace and trying to fix Israeli society. We might call them the good guys. They're in abundance. They exist. They turned me down cold because, Donna, they didn't want their neighbors to read what they would say. So while it may be a simple thing to say, get a Muslim and a Jew, get up there and daven and shuckle and whatever, I will tell you that in overwhelming percentage, any Muslim who would do that would not be insurable for life insurance.
No.
That person would be dead soon.
Sad.
That's just part of the reality. So
Thanks,
while we're speaking about crises, and I love to speak about crises, how about the Israeli cabinet crisis? Are you aware of that? Would someone like to comment on what you know about that? The Israeli cabinet crisis. You know, with Bennett as prime minister and Lapid is prime minister in waiting, after 2 years, I love that dog. Within 2 years, they're supposed to be shifting and Lapid becomes prime minister. The coalition holds a broad mandate with a one vote plurality, majority, one vote. What's happening right now? Members of the coalition, a little here, a little there, are abandoning the coalition. This week, the coalition's voting strength slipped below 59. Incidentally, if you believe in coincidences, the trial of Bibi Netanyahu, which has been going on now for what, a year and a half, something like that. I find it hard to keep track. He is winning little piece by little piece. Witnesses have retracted statements, or witnesses' statements were contradictory, or the Israeli Supreme Court ruled a particular issue is not grounds for criminal prosecution. Little by little, Bibi is standing taller now than he was a year and a half ago. Little by little, the coalition, folks, what was the only thing that unified the coalition? One thing. Harv.
Bibi. They didn't like him.
We will join the coalition to get Bibi out. What comes next, we'll worry about. Well, they got Bibi out. And now, to use a New Testament quote, this camel is poking his nose under the tent. And Bibi, I don't want to say like weaseling or crawling, so I'm just going to use the nose under the tent. Bibi is getting more secure. The coalition is growing weaker. Sudden surprise, the people leaving the coalition reversed course and they're back up to 61. This is a fragile arrangement. Anyone comes to the Knesset and says, I've got a migraine, I quit. Boom, the government falls. So this is the current situation. Oh, to make it easier, lest you think this is a simple matter, guess who's coming to dinner? Biden. He's coming to visit Israel.
Yay.
To speak with whom?
I'm
Bibi.
not sure.
So
Send me a Christmas card.
Israeli breakfasts are really very, very nice in the hotels. That's good. But I will tell you that the coalition is as fragile as it could be. We could yet see this fall elections again in Israel. And if that happens, it is possible that the right-wing coalition will gain a majority. What is not known is whether that right-wing coalition will choose Bibi to head it. Okay? That is an actual question. So thank God we live in this country in a stable political environment, and Israel is confronting this really, really difficult situation.
Mhm.
Comment before we move on.
I have one thing to say. I hate the Hamas. I think that they're arms dealers, the ones that want to keep this war going. They don't care about nothing but making money selling the weapons. And I would love to get to the bottom of who's behind that and blow their head off.
Another statement of peace and love, which is very much a part of the reform movement's attitude about social justice, pursuing peace and loving it, and are we not all made in the image of God? So setting that aside, there was the assassination this past week of a major terrorist leader.
That's good.
No one has claimed responsibility for it, but Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon are gearing up, arming to the teeth.
God bless the Israeli Haganah.
And if Israel actually moves to support Ukraine, Russia will unleash the control it had over Syria and allow Iranian arms to flow directly to Hezbollah. So while we're thinking about the chessboard with all the pieces moving, Israel is now sending flak jackets. Israel is sending military defensive gear to the Ukraine. If they take the next step, at this point, the Israeli ambassador in Russia has been called in and severely criticized. One more step, and Israel will have a hot border on Syria, Lebanon, and Gaza.
And here comes the 82nd Airborne.
Okay, so that's where we are with that. Anyone else want to jump in on a comment? If not, we will move further in current events.
I love you, Rabbi. Jump in. My dad was in the 82nd Airborne. I would love to jump in. They'd parachute me there and I'd kill Putin.
Okay. Oh, I see.
I have a
Lynn
question.
coming.
I have a question.
I see Susie, and then I see Doris, and I see, hi, Lynn.
Regarding this possibility of the power in Israel being changed and Bibi having a chance to come back, what
Good.
happens to this other guy, I forgot his name, who's waiting for his turn to be the prime minister?
Well, one thing he might do is stand in the middle of the Knesset, stamp his feet, and cry. I mean, I think that's one thing that he could do. Secondly, the coalition agreement says that if the government falls, Lapid will become prime minister until the results of the election are in. So he will be able to tell his grandchildren he was prime minister for a few months. So if you're worried, maybe he won't stamp his feet and cry in the Knesset, though I think he might. Okay, Doris.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Rabbi, I was upset when I read that the Ukrainian soldiers gave in to the Russians and the Russians captured them and took them as prisoners of war. What do you think is going to happen to them in Russia's control? There were several, with the thousands of them, I believe.
At least hundreds. Yeah, a large number.
How safe can they be there? I mean, I just...
Very easy. Doris, you don't have to be a prophet. A, they are not safe. B, they will be tortured. C, they will be held as exchange for Russian soldiers held by the Ukrainians. And since the Ukrainians have now convicted one Russian soldier of war crime, the Russians will now, in their open democratic courts, convict Ukrainian soldiers of war crimes. And it's going to be, oh God, do I have any good news? Well, yeah, I have good news. Doris, that's the answer to your question. It's bad and very bad.
Didn't expect a good news on that front, but I was hoping for something.
The other piece of bad news is as people look at the war and see stalemate on the Eastern Front, Russia holds a strip of land from the Crimea all the way up, now that this Mariupol fort fell, or this place fell.
Mhm.
And people are going to say, the Russians hold it, let them hold that in exchange for a ceasefire. That's going to be actively on the political scene. From my point of view, that would be a dreadful outcome. It may be the only outcome, but it would be dreadful for the Ukraine. They will have lost a major swath of territory. Russia will have militarily gained from all of the horrors they imposed upon the Ukrainians, and they will walk away scot-free.
Yeah.
So, nevertheless, people will say, you want a war for the next 5 years? Or do you want to just give that valuable piece of land to the Russians, don't punish the Russians, and have the war stop? Howard. You're muted, Howard.
Sorry, I'm beginning to get the idea, starting in 1939 when I was born and the Czechoslovakia was sacrificed, that appeasement is not a good idea, or very seldom. Not a good thing.
All I can say to you, Howard, is yes, you're right. You're right. Appeasing an autocrat does not lead to happy futures. It does not. And what do they say? People who do not study history or learn are doomed to relive it. Yes. Yes. On the other hand, how long will the NATO coalition hold together with Hungary supporting Putin? And there are several other less than stalwart supporters. Can we say that we're going to hold the coalition together for 5 years, Howard?
I think it would be a good trade Finland and Sweden in exchange for Hungary.
I don't think anyone's offering to make that trade, Howard.
Well, somebody should think about it.
Okay, in other words, tell Russia, you can have Hungary. We got Sweden. Okay, Finland, go. That would be great, Howard. I want to see you smile because you know that's not going to happen. But okay,
Rabbi, may I ask you a question?
please.
Don't you believe in the miracle of Hanukkah?
That is way too big of a question for me to answer now. And if
Because
you
they're
think
all on the gas.
it's not what actually happened, Donna.
Okay.
That story isn't history. Secondly, there
Oh.
is a Talmudic injunction, en somchin al hanes. We are forbidden to depend or rely upon miracles. So
Rely
if
upon
we
God.
even believe the Hanukkah story, the notion that we should await a miracle is contrary to Jewish law.
I didn't know that. What about the Dead Sea
I make
Scrolls?
this stuff up as I go along, but you know,
What about the Dead Sea Scrolls? And
you're going off. So let's.
I'm just asking you, Rabbi. I'm just asking you
Let's
because I had
focus.
an idea. I believe that God can do anything out of nothing at all, and he can dry up the oil underneath Putin's butt. For I'm praying he would dry it all up underneath all our enemies, Israel's enemies, and let me be held their knickers down with nothing. God can do it. If someone believes that God can do it, he can act on that person like Abraham. God made miracles. If you believe.
Isn't that part of a Broadway show? If you believe.
Yeah, I'll write a script for it.
Okay. I appreciate and respect your religious perspective, a perspective which I do not share.
I love Israel so much.
Okay, well, I share that part. What happened in June 3rd, 1972? There is the key to an electric car sitting in your driveway, if you can come up with this. June 3rd, 1972. You got 5 seconds.
Oh God. Hold on a second.
50 years ago.
War.
George McGovern got nominated.
What? George McGovern. Yeah, that fits in with Donna's attitude about looking for miracles. Fine.
50 years
Israel was attacked.
ago.
Jewish girl from Cleveland was ordained as the first woman rabbi in North America.
What was her name?
Yay.
June 3rd, 1972. So we are coming up to the 50th anniversary of Sally Presend becoming the first woman rabbi in North America.
Wow.
I was 19. I still look 19.
So I'd like to ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
And I know that none of you have strong feelings. What's been the impact of having women clergy in the Reform and now conservative and to a tiny extent Orthodox clergy?
Huge impact.
Okay, Merle.
I think that it's opened the way for other women and other Jewish professional areas. I think that's the best way I can explain it without going into detail of every single thing.
So it broke
every
open,
single-
it cracked the glass ceiling, or whatever the metaphor, it broke open the door and women are going through that door.
And I think it also gave women more of an ability to speak their part on what needs to be spoken.
Excellent. Let's go on because there's a lot here, not the automatic stuff. What else? What is the impact? Sally Presend, June 3rd, 50th anniversary of the ordination of the first woman rabbi in North America. What else?
That women get listened to.
What else, folks? Okay, Doris.
This just passed through my brain. I thought maybe it opened up the door for other Jewish women just to feel more a part of their religion and their synagogue, and they felt that they could participate in their own way.
And that is a separate point. One point, Jewish professionals' doors cracked open or smashed open, women rabbis, and they can become directors, And the second point that Doris raises is it also creates a situation in which Jewish women feel more a part of what they live with, whether or not they become a professional. Fine, Risa.
The women have added traditions that had never been thought of before.
Like what?
Using the mikvah with new blessings for everything from divorce to miscarriage to starting a new job, all kinds of prayer that reflects more of what happens in our everyday life.
Super. That's somewhat less visible, but it's huge, right?
That's
So
beautiful.
more professionals, more Jewish women feeling comfortable, and change in our liturgy, in our prayer patterns and ritual. Let's go, miscarriage. Yes, you talk about miscarriage. Divorce, the number of women who go to a mikveh as part of a religious ceremony marking the completion of the divorce process. Okay? That is tying ancient traditions to contemporary needs. And there's much more. Susie.
Seeing more women on the bima, seeing more women occupying presidency of the synagogue, having much more to women contributing quite a bit more, being listened to.
Thank you.
Here, here.
Thank you. Okay, please. Cindy.
I think, well, I was bat mitzvahed in the early 60s, and I was the exception doing it at 13. And I think this led the way that all girls were to be treated equally, and you were expected to have a bat mitzvah just as the boys would be expected to have a bar mitzvah.
I'm so glad you had a bat mitzvah.
Yep. Okay, Risa.
The whole concept of gender and how we relate to God, changing he to Lord, and getting rid of Lord and changing it to using the word God or Adonai has increased our appreciation for how to think about God. And there's been a lot of discussion about it, which has opened people's minds to what belief in God in Judaism really means.
Okay, Donna.
I just agree with Risa, and I'm learning because I just joined the temple just recently, and they gave me a big break on the membership because I'm a princess in pauper's clothing right now. But the support of the women, the sisterhood, it's so healing and so beautiful and so precious to me to tune in and hear everyone's voices and such support. This is huge for women.
Yes, Risa didn't say it's not, but she's saying that the language.
I agree with her.
The language of prayer, and by changing the language of prayer, we're doing more than orthography. We're changing. Part of what's in book 3 is a chapter devoted to gender fluidity in the Talmud. Do you know when the last time was that became a topic of study?
Hard-boiled eggs in a special place.
It's a little container. You'll see them. It's marked hard-boiled.
It's radical. It's radical to raise these questions. And Okay, I don't want to do the offerings. Okay, bye-bye, Gilroy. Thank you. Thank you. And now I'm left alone. Oh, Risa and the cat. Yeah, okay. What else? Sally Present, 50 years ago. Liturgy, new prayers, openness to professionals, acceptability of women and feeling more a part of the whole. What else? What else?
Family.
Have any of you been personally impacted from the results of Sally Present's being ordained? Oh, what? Harv is going to do show and tell. Okay,
Yeah,
Harv.
this is a
What do you
copy
have?
of the Torah, a women's commentary. My guess is it wouldn't have been around except for that breakthrough rabbi, women's rabbi, to
My
start
birthday
that
is
ball
next
rolling.
month. Want to give me one?
Okay, I would say that on that bet, Harvey, you win. Of course, that wouldn't have been here. You know the funny result of that. Why do I start that way? The funny result of that was that the men of Reform Judaism lodged a formal complaint. If the women can have a commentary of their own, why can't we?
They already
The
did.
response to it was, you've got the Talmud, you've got the Midrash, you've got this, you've got medieval commentators. How much more do you want? Forgive me, but that was kind of a weird complaint. But okay.
I know why.
Merle, you have
There's
your-
also a women's Haftorah commentary,
Yes,
which I think was published before the women's Torah commentary.
there
The other thing is that, like in our Seder, women became more of a symbolism.
absolutely.
and-
You start putting your Miriam's cup and the when the women, right?
But that it opened up the door for women to be in more places besides just daily prayer.
Okay, and I'm going to offer.
Speaking of Miriam and singing and then the Seder
Okay, wait,
and
wait,
miracles,
wait 1 second, please. I'm going to offer a negative because that's my job, not to leave you feeling happy with me. When the field of rabbis opened, so that now we probably have a majority of women as rabbinic students in Reform and non-Orthodox settings. As women moved into positions of authority within synagogues, there has also been a weakening of the participation of men in these activities. So I am positive that this is a period of adjustment, but it's not all in one direction. It's not all in one direction. And one of the things that is coincidental but profoundly troubling is that the number of students in general applying for rabbinical school is plummeting. It is possible that HUC in the incoming class will have a total of 15 rabbinic students entering the Hebrew Union College,
oh no.
which is a drop of at least 50%. Okay? And there is enormous change. I would call it disruption coming in the structure of Jewish life. It's happening as we are watching, but most of us don't see it. But this disruption, Sally Presand's ordination is a blessing. It is a blessing, period. End of quote. And the issues of gender and participation, the role of the rabbi, the role of the synagogue, all of these are under enormous pressure to change. I don't know about you, but I do believe that when my grandchildren, our grandchildren, God willing, are our age, they will see an American Jewish institutional structure dramatically different from what we have today. Dramatically different. The good news about that prediction is I'll be dead, so you can't say you were wrong. Okay, but the question to ask ourselves is, this change is happening all around us. To what extent are we involved in monitoring, studying, shaping that change? That's a separate issue. Is it going to happen despite us? Or is it going to happen with us? When I speak, when Risa and I speak, and I'm sure Cindy the same, speak with women of Reform Judaism leadership, they are fully aware that as things are now, 50 years from now, they will not be that way. But what way will they be?
Better.
They don't know. They don't know.
Better.
That's what's going on right now. And I guess my appeal is, folks, there is dramatic change coming to the Jewish community in North America. It is a real disruption. Synagogues are going to be Model T Fords in the Jewish future. What will be the emergent community structure? I don't know. But I can tell you this, it's happening right now. My mentee, this has been a 4-year process with her. We're still warmly connected. She's HUC student in Israel now. Is planning to be ordained in a year, Risa, in a year? 1 year? 2 years still. And she's in for the long haul. She's been studying and studying and studying. Her goal is not a synagogue. She is trying to find a real estate developer who will help develop a physical setting in a city, maybe a set of apartment buildings, in which Jews will move and create community, and she will be the rabbi of that community.
That's cool.
I don't know. All I can say is dramatic change. Susie.
I don't see your example. I don't see it as that different, because you look at a community like of seniors in a beautiful setting. They have their own rabbi many times.
That is true, but as a mainstream alternative not reserved for seniors, forgive me, for something which is going to be viable in the midst of the demography of the Jewish people, it's dramatically new. So, Risa.
Do you think the village concept is heading in that direction also?
The village concept here in LA?
Yeah, the Laura Geller's
thing. I would say absolutely yes. Laura Geller is pushing at the edges of the given. Yes, she is.
I'm surprised that you're not going in the direction of social media and technology, and that's going to be in the forefront of religion, particularly the Jewish religion. Look at us now.
I'm going to talk to Susie. I would ask that nobody else listen. Just Susie and me. Okay?
Oh, I'm
Susie,
flattered.
if technology takes over the majority of Jewish interaction in worship and study, we're doomed. Doomed, not damaged, doomed. Because, Susie, my belief, remember I said this is the 125th anniversary of Dracula, so we can think in cataclysmic terms. What I think Jews want most of all from the synagogue experience is community. And in the best of times, we have learned over 2 years, you don't get community online. You get a lot of other good stuff. You don't get community. If what draws us into religious life is the desire for community, may I also talk to, and discovering meaning in life and purpose, that's community. And I think, by the way, you know that evolution is filled with dead ends. You know that there are dead ends all over the map of evolution. Only a few make it through. I think that the experiment with technology over the 2 years will prove to be an evolutionary dead end. Not that we won't use it a lot, we will. Not that we won't live stream as well as be in person, we will. Not that we won't have a bris with people present and people all over the world participating, we will. But the future is to create an instrument that strengthens community and meaning. Risa, and then I'm going to have to stop ranting.
Okay, I think that what happened to us on Friday night in the presence of Merle that we talked about earlier proves the point, because we are a community.
Here.
Merle and I are on lots of different Zoom meetings and classes together. We have become friends, but sitting together, holding each other, a hug for Shabbat Shalom, it was different.
That community Friday night for my mother's yard site, where so many people knew my mother, including Rabbi Leader and Don, as well as people in the service. That hug and that personal community. Yes, Stanley covered it Saturday morning for Torah study.
Oh,
But
really?
it's not the same as a real in-person hug and tears that go along with it. That was, and Saturday night, the camp event, there were so many people there, though they had to change the structure of what leadership night and mitzvah night usually are. But for everybody to be together for whatever reason they were there, that's the community part. That, yeah, we get it online. We talk, we joke, we tease, whatever, but we learn. But in person, we all got what we needed.
Thank you, Risa and Merle. Thank you. Folks, with
I love
love,
that.
we have so much more to do, but we have run out of time. Please,
No,
virtual hugs. Hug the people in the
I love
video
everybody.
box next to you. Hug,
Read my
come on.
chat.
Hug the person over there. Come on, Joanne. I want to hug you. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Lynn, am I hugging you? I'm not there. Okay.
Bye, Susie.
Miriam,
Bye, Cindy.
fine.
Bye.
So
Bye.
that's
Everybody,
as close as
have
we
a
can
beautiful
get.
afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Merle. Thank
Doris?
you. Bye. Thank you, Rita.
Doris, baby next week?
Susie, we gotta go for lunch.
Wait. Doris, you're muted.
Okay. They went to the doctor the other day and the doctor said it was fine. They thought they